is absolutely wild as Vern Gagne's all-star wrestling goes coast to coast and continent to continent. The greatest wrestlers in the world.
He may be an apprentice carpenter, but I guarantee you he is a seasoned ring veteran.
I've been hit with bar stools, bar rags, bar mates.
I'm talking to you.
They're scared that Hulkamania's still running wild. Oh, yeah. I got a big fat wife and 9 kids at home, and I gotta feed them.
And take a look at Jesse the Body in real life.
Open your hand once, if you would.
You want to see it?
This is absolutely unbelievable. Totally, completely out of control.
He's coming in over the top. Hey! Look out!
Hey, look out indeed. It's been several weeks, but we are back. Happy 2025, you guys. I'm going to bring in these guys because these guys make me happy. They should make you happy too. If they don't make you happy, you're the problem, but we got no problems because it's 2025 and we're talking wrestling, boys.
Yes, sir. Happy New Year to everybody. Let's hope it's a good one and a healthy one and a safe and happy blah, blah, blah. And hopefully we remember how to do this. You know, this has been a while here.
Is this the right podcast? Because we're a minute 35 in and nobody has given anybody any shit yet?
No,
shut the hell up.
Okay, I'm in the right place. Just wanted to be sure, you know.
That was tremendous.
Unicorn and rainbow dust here, but yes, Happy New Year to everybody. Let's talk some AWA wrestling.
Yes,
and we are back.
Yes, we are. Yes,
Well,
we are.
we are going to. This is the beginning of our third year, right? 22. 23, 24.
Yep.
25. Okay.
Yep.
Oh my God. I can't even. I'd make a great professional wrestling referee because I literally cannot count to 3.
Well, they
I
can
would be a
count.
great
It
referee.
it takes them 45 seconds to get up to 3.
That's true.
That's right.
That's true. Well, here we are, and we are going to talk some old school wrestling. We are going to go back, and of course, we got the promotion, guys. I know you guys are going to love the plugs. Going to have to do that. But we're going to start out 2025 kind of the same way that we started the show itself, the podcast itself. And the beginning of the AWA was Vern Gagne and Wally Karbo. And we decided to start 2025 by going back and revisiting that topic, but a little bit of a twist on it, Mick.
Little bit of a twist on it. First of all, it's going to be 50% of that original broadcast because we're going to be talking only about Wally with an occasional reference to Vern. But we're not going to talk about Wally's history in the business necessarily and his background and blah, blah, blah. We're going to talk Wallyisms. We're going to talk Karbo Kapers. A lot of them we have talked about on this show already, but who gives a shit? We're going to do it again because Wally is legendary, and revisiting these stories is a great way to kick off the new year. You know, for those who have not heard them before, they're true. That's the bizarre part about this, Joe Chupik, is that they are all true.
So we're going to talk about Uncle Wally. He's been legendary in many aspects of things, shall we say.
Yes, I had Wallyisms, but indeed, I believe Mick, you had said they are Karbo Kapers. So we're going to have some Karbo Kapers. But before that, guys, you know the deal. First of all, if you want to become a member, you see it $4.99 a month. We've got watch-alongs. We've got live chats. Now, we didn't do any in December because there were some other things that had to preclude kind of the extra stuff. But we do have exclusive interviews. We have a lot of fun little neat extras that if you want more of us, and I mean, let's be honest, after you haven't seen us for a month, you really want more. Or maybe you're like, that month was good. Either way, $4.99. You will really enjoy it. I think it's some of the best value in wrestling podcasting, and that is a complete shoot. So if you do that, we would be ever so thankful. It also helps us provide more content as well. Also, tpublic.com /unleashed plus shirts. You can get, I'm a Slick Mick guy, and I was going to work on the Mick head logo, but I obviously did not get to that like I wanted to. But I will get some Mick head stuff up. And my number one goal for 2025 is to get the term Mick head over.
Oh, it's over. The other thing I would say to your great plugs, by the way, the other thing I would say in terms of our absence, some people, judging by our emails, etc., it was really withdrawal. It was, they're hungry to have us back. For others, it was a cleansing diet. And, but either way, here we are, everybody, and you're stuck with us at least for another year. We hope.
Well, let's get into some of Karbo's capers.
Let's get into
it. Unless we have something else to plug, or are we ready to rock and roll?
I don't think so. So I think first of all, it's the comicals. People look at Wally, and it's kind of a funny thing. So people think of him as being a little bit humorous.
Wally was a character. If you had to describe Wally Karbo to the average person, you couldn't, not in its entirety. The flip side of that Wally was a shrewd businessman. I mean, he was a wrestling promoter. He knew the business, the wrestling and the boxing business, and what you saw on television. Believe it or not, behind that, there was a pretty sharp guy. But we don't want to focus on the pretty sharp guy. We want to focus on the Wally Karbo that we knew and loved, and we'll revisit some of the stories and maybe bring up some new ones. So, Choopski.
Yeah, Joe, why don't you go ahead, and I'll get all the pictures ready, and we'll let you kind of run the ship here.
I like to think of Wally as like the comedic foil, the unwitting comedic foil of all-star wrestling.
Absolutely.
It wasn't intentional.
Okay, I was going to ask if it was intentional, if he was supposed to be out there just kind of the bumbling, silly, goofy guy.
But that was part of Wally's charm, is what you saw was Wally. What you looked at was really effing funny. To this day, fines and suspensions is still used as much as gimmick.
And you guys brought up a great point. Wally was the authority figure. And when he would come out to deliver the fines and suspensions, this is supposed to be a moment of intensity. I mean, this is supposed to be the bad guys, the heels are getting their comeuppance finally, but it was the delivery. It wasn't necessarily the pitch itself, but it was the delivery that people still talk about to this day. And as you said, Joe, boy, that great. Fines and suspensions is what people associate with Wally Karbo all these years later. So let's get into some of the memories that we've got of the Wally stir.
So not only was Wally a promoter and a partner in the AWA, but little known fact that Wally was also a translator.
Yeah.
Wally was of Polish heritage. And we have Ivan Putski on the screen. And we've brought this up several times on this podcast, but Mick, tell us the whole Wally and Ivan Putski interview.
Well, I will to an extent, Joe, because you're the one that delivers the key line there. First of all, look at the arms on Ivan Putski. That's not an arm. That's a freaking moon landing. Ivan Putski, Joe Benarski of Texas, apparently somewhere along the way something happened to him in the ring, maybe, and he forgot how to speak English, and he went back to full Polish. But Wally, again, being of Polish extraction himself, had to translate for Ivan Putski and to Ivan Putski. And Joe, there was one point where Marty O'Neill wanted to know what Ivan Putski, in all his thickness, what he actually weighed. But Ivan didn't quite understand the question coming from Marty O'Neill, so they had to bring in an expert.
I'm sorry, I'm just laughing from the memory. Marty tried his best. Asked him, how much you weigh? Well, communication issue. So Marty O'Neill decides to bring in Wally Karbo. Wally, who is of Polish heritage and apparently was supposed to know Polish. Now, being first generation and speaking nothing but Polish growing up in our household, I knew right away that Wally wasn't really quite well versed in the Polish language. So Wally comes in, and Marty O'Neill asks Wally, so Wally, could you please ask Ivan Putski how much he weighs? And Wally, in his infinite wisdom, comes out with more of an Italian accent, shall we say?
A little bit, yeah.
Ivan, how much are you weigh?
You know, we can sit here in retrospect and question Wally Karbo, but perhaps Ivan Putski was from a certain part of Poland. Maybe, like there's Chinatown in New York City. Maybe there's Italian town.
I've traveled all across Poland, and in no part of that country is the accent is
there's no
language.
Little Italy in Poland. Is that what you're saying?
There is no how much you weigh in Poland. Although if I ever get enough money, win a lottery, I'm going to buy a small town in Poland, and call it how much you weigh Poland.
I think that's a great idea. And
It'll be your own version of Schitt's Creek.
With all due respect to Wally, we're kind of, taking shots at the guy here, but Ivan Putski was a big guy. Is it possible that Wally mistook Ivan Putski for Bruno Sammartino
No.
because of that doesn't work either.
No. Next. Here. Keep fishing.
Reel it in. All right, let's go on to memory number 2 of Wally Karbo.
So Wally was supposed to know Polish, apparently did not. His Italian wasn't exactly Italian, and some would say that his command of the English language really wasn't that wonderful. And Mick, tell us the story about our friend Medusa and Wally.
Well, it's a lot of people think her name was Medusa Michelli, but Wally told us otherwise. As he was referring to Medusa, our friend, on an edition of SNR, Wally referred to, first he started to say Deb, and then he caught himself. He knew that wasn't going to play well, but it was Michelli. No, it was not Medusa Michelli. It was Michelli, which sounds like something you will order at Big B's Pizza, with a side of meat sauce. But, so we had a lesson there that we've been pronouncing her last name wrong all those years, as well as another guy. And I know, Chris, you have the second photograph, I believe. Let's take a look here.
Oh, yep. I'm just had to make sure I had it lined up here. I had to get what's the name? Michelli?
Michelli. Yeah, okay. Medusa Michelli. And this guy here, now, if you look at the name that's printed on that football card, former football player, wrestler, so on and so forth, it looks like you would read it as Leo Namalini. Apparently, we were wrong there, too. Because when Wally came out and was talking about this particular guy, he went on to perhaps the longest name in the history of mankind, almost choked on his tongue, because it's not Namalini. It's not and we didn't know that. So again, we make fun of Wally, but Wally knew things that we didn't know. And don't ask me to repeat nominal whatever, because I just about choked to death here.
Sounds like all you have to do is yodel and you get it.
That's exactly what it is. Another talent that Wally had was yodeling. We did not know that, but yes, or as Bobby Heenan said, you read his name, it looks like an eye chart. But there you go, another Wallyism.
It's a good thing that AWA wrestlers didn't have jerseys. Can you imagine trying to put that spelling on the back of his jersey?
It'll
like run across the back and along the sides,
and across the whole team. I believe by the time you got to the final I and nominal whatever. But yeah, that's another Wallyism.
Well, imagine if there was closed captioning and you had to try to put the graphic on the screen for that.
Oh, good God.
Well, you could apply that to pretty much any one of Wally's promos. Captioning would have been an adventure in itself.
Let's go on to the next memory of our pal Wally.
So Wally was a brilliant promoter, brilliant wrestling mind. But like anybody, I mean, nothing in this world is 100%. And in the case of our next photo, let's just say Wally was 100% wrong about X-Pac, or 1-2-3 Kid, as he was known.
You know, every once in a while, Wally would show up at the independent shows in the Twin Cities at George's, Roper's, and Fridley, wherever. And one particular night, this is early on. This would have been in the late '80s. Wally came to see one of Eddie Sharkey's Pro Wrestling America shows, and on that card was Sean Waltman, X-Pac, 1-2-3 Kid, Lightning Kid, so on and so forth. And, tremendously talented guy. And I had an opportunity to chat with Wally for just a moment after Sean had wrestled. Spectacular match. And Wally, ever the prognosticator, ever the Kreskin of the wrestling business, said, Wally, he said, Sean, he's very talented, but it's the size. This guy will never draw a dime in the wrestling business. And I believe history has proven Wally wrong. But at the time, Wally was used to the heavyweights running around, and he predicted, kind of like predicting the Vikings winning a Super Bowl, he predicted that Sean Waltman would never draw a dime in the wrestling business. There you go.
Yeah, it just goes to show you not everybody can nail it 100% of the time.
No, you don't click on all cylinders every time you open up your mouth, as we well know on this podcast.
No, but Wally had an issue with somebody who thought that he could hit it 100% all of the time. And I'm talking about Jesse the Body Ventura. And here he is with his tag team partner, and they formed the East-West Connection. I'm talking about adorable Adrian Adonis. But tell us about this dastardly duo and Wally's temper rising and causing him to do something on a promo mic.
Well, Wally, was a wonderful guy, even-tempered, but damn it, if you pushed him too far, he was going to explode. And that particular night that Jesse and Adrian wrestled George Gadaski and Kenny J on television, and dropped one of the falls to George and Kenny, which eventually led to Wally coming in the ring because Adrian and Jesse went ballistic, and they started beating the shit out of Kenny J and George Gadaski, to the point where Wally had to go in and administer justice. He had to. So, with his two hair strands sticking up and his AWA blazer and his pot belly, Wally made his way into the ring. And in a moment of fury, he told Adonis and Ventura, "You fellas, are suspended and true. Now, there's no H in true, I realized, but so they were not suspended and through, they were suspended and true. And they were gone. They wound up tearing Wally's blazer, I believe, because they couldn't understand why it was so bad to be true in this world. But yeah, for some reason Wally forgot the H in the word true, and Adonis and Ventura were in fact true.
The command of the English language and Wally, not synonymous. But
would Wally make it in today's wrestling? Like, how would he be received with all of this stuff? And I know that there are more stories, but I mean, would people looked at him as an authority figure? Would they take him seriously nowadays?
No, they would love him, but your authority figures, if you think about it right now, are very serious. Whether it's Adam Pearce or Nick Aldis or whoever, they come in the ring and they lay down the law. And no, I don't think. No.
I would love to see it tried just to have something different.
Yeah, well, we had Bob Ryan in AWA legal counsel back then.
Very true.
Okay, let's move on.
But one thing Wally did have a command of were the ladies, and I say that because Wally. Wally had a free ride. For fuck's sake, just say it. Wally had a free ride in any airport that the AWA landed. He just had a harem, shall we say, wherever he went. And I mentioned it earlier and on other podcasts. For those of you that don't know, Milton Berle was infamous back in the day of being well endowed. And apparently Wally was the Uncle Milty of the AWA. And Wally loved the ladies.
And the ladies loved Wally's hog.
They did.
Yeah. Enough to pick him up from airports and give him rides wherever he wanted to go. One story that Al Darusha told me about Wally, that Wally would like to do. And I got to preface this by saying, don't try this at home. Don't do this at home. This is a different time. It's a different place. But this is what Wally, one of the things that he would do. He would remove the doorknobs from the door, insert Mr. Friendly, and suddenly there would be a human doorknob. And Wally would go, oh, hey, there, come over here. Could you come open this door for me? Talk about a twist in the office etiquette.
Wally was a stallion. Let's put it the way it was.
Hey, you don't ask if you don't try.
No, exactly. And something, maybe add a little WD-40 if the doorknob sticks a little bit. But Wally did have a port in every storm. Wally, I guess, would be the prototypical sugar daddy, although I don't know how much financial transaction there was there. But the ladies loved Wally. He was a charmer, and for all his bumbling on television, I tell you what, I mean, this son of a bitch, he didn't have to worry about where he was going to stay, whether it was in Denver or Chicago, how you could get to the arena or the airport. It was all taken care of courtesy of Flicka, Wally Karbo.
He could barely talk on a promo, or at least properly, but he must have really had the gift of gab when it came to the women. I mean, just something about it. Wally, legendary. Just going to leave it at that.
Very much so. Okay. Continuing.
He was really one of the boys. I mean, one of the boys, really. I mean, you think about it, John.
Well, he was several of the boys, really, according to legend. But that's, Here nor there. Okay, go ahead, Joe.
Well, this next one, I have never heard this story, so I'm looking forward to it. The topic comes up is as lunch with Mick and the missing rental car.
Yeah, this is one of my favorites, and we've talked about this on the podcast a couple of times. Ladies and gentlemen, you got to envision Wally Karbo. People who know Wally and what he looked like and his physical appearance, you got to put that as part of the visual. There was going to be a pay-per-view coming up for the LPWA, Ladies Professional Wrestling Association. And Wally had gotten me a gig with Tor Berg, who ran the organization, and I was going to be doing some backstage interviews. So Wally just wanted to go over a few things. So we met for lunch at a Byerly's restaurant, very close to where Wally lived in Edina, Minnesota. And we're chit-chatting, blah, blah, blah. It comes the end of the lunch, which Wally, yes, he paid the tab. And Wally said, do you need a lift somewhere? Yeah, I appreciate that, Wally, blah, blah, blah. So we are going out to Wally's vehicle. And it's the dead of winter. And Wally has this stocking cap perched on top of his head. You got to imagine this, folks. And he had a parka on. He actually did. And, those hair strands are sticking up, like two antennae on a Martian. And Wally, he's looking around. I'm watching him, and he's going up and down the aisles in the parking lot. Wally, what's the matter? Can't find my car. Okay, all right. I go, what kind of car is it, Wally? It's a rental. It's a rental car. It's a red rental car. All right. Red rental car. So far, so good. Now it's cold outside. You got to imagine you're seeing Wally with the puffs of air, and smoke coming out of his ears and mouth and everything. He's going up and down, and he's looking into all these cars. Now, I tell you what, if you're a security guy and you're seeing this, you gotta haul this guy in right away. Finally, Wally excitedly, like a kid at Christmas, hey, Mick, it's over here. I ran over to the car, and sure enough, it was a red rental car. I said, Wally, how did you pick this out? Well, it's got a map of Winnipeg on the back seat, and that's how I knew this was my car. Well, we're in the age of GPS now, and I'm thinking to myself, had this been now, this day, we would still be looking for the car because there would have been no map of the city of Winnipeg on the back of his backseat of his fucking rental car. But I'm telling you, this guy, he would have been arrested. He would have been arrested as a creeper. He's looking at everybody's car window, every red car.
You should have asked him, hey, Wally, where are the car?
Yeah, where is the car? I'm the thought popped into my head when you brought up GPS. Think about this. Can you imagine Wally trying to operate a mobile phone?
Oh my God. Oh Lord. We have a pile up on I-35, ladies and gentlemen.
I thought you were going to say, imagine Wally trying to drive one of these new electric vehicles. It just has the push button and everything.
Oh, can you imagine? It's just a total disaster. But yeah, it was infamous, and that would have led to another arrest for Wally Karbo back in the day. But and he eventually took me the 2 blocks to wherever I was going, and but I will never forget that sight of Wally going up and down the aisles here, and all you saw was the 2 hair antennas sticking up. So there we go, little Wally.
Okay, our next one, Mick. You had to vouch for Wally at a LPWA, which is Ladies Professional Wrestling Association pay-per-view. Tell us about what happened there.
Yeah, the LPWA, and by the way, Wally was the commissioner, the on-screen commissioner for the LPWA. And boy, I tell you what, you talk about appropriate. I once asked Wally about it, and I remember this quote. Wally says, can you fucking imagine how lucky I am? I'm surrounded by all that, and at my age. So at any rate,
real life casting couch.
Yeah, exactly. So the LPWA is going to run this show at Rochester, Minnesota, pay-per-view, and everybody's going through, security and what have you. And for some reason, they stopped Wally. They didn't have Wally's name on the guest list. And so the lady is looking at Wally and she says, "Sir, you're not." Says, "Check it out. I'm down there. I tell you, I'm down there." And she says, "Well, who are you?" "I'm Wally. I'm local." "I'm Wally. I'm local." Well, that's going to get you in to pretty much any building there is. So of all people, she took my word for the fact that this is in fact the commissioner of the LPWA, Wally Karbo. She apologized profusely. Wally shook his head. A couple of snowflakes fell off his nose, and we were off and running. But I'm Wally. I'm local. Remember that, folks. Whenever you're in trouble, use that line, and you'll be sure to get
I'm Wally.
response.
I'm local.
I'm Wally. I'm local. That's right.
Oh, God.
Right. There we go.
I wonder if Stanley Blackburn ever had that issue.
No. He's never local.
Well, very true.
All right.
So our next one, let's talk about Dr. X delivering an appearance bond to Wally. What happened there, Mick?
You know something? When Wally Karbo talks, you listen. I don't give a shit if you're the most important wrestler in the world. As Dr. X was certainly on top here in the AWA at the time. Well, Wally wanted to assure that Dr. X would appear for a match against Vern Gagne. And I believe this was going to be at the Met Center in Bloomington, Minnesota. So Wally laid the law down, and he said, it is 1 week on television, he says, "Next week, you're going to post a $10,000 bond, and I want it right here in the studio." All right. Comes time for the $10,000 bond to be delivered the next day, and Dr. X comes in. Wally's waiting for him, and Dr. X has two security guys, like Brinks drivers with him. And Wally, Karbo, "I'm going to pay you your money right now, and then you get off my back. Hold out your hands." Wally holds his hands out, and these Brinks truck drivers proceed to pour buckets of change in Wally's hands, allegedly $10,000 worth of buckets of change. And Wally dutifully, Joe and Chris, stands there with his hands out as the money is continuing to flow out of his palms onto the studio floor, pennies, dimes, nickels, quarters. And he's just standing there and he's looking at it like he's almost psychologically counting it. I fully expected Wally to say, "Wait a minute, you shorted me $1." But yeah, Wally stood there like a schoolboy with his hands out, and he got the $10,000 in change from Dr. X. What a moment. What a moment.
Wow.
And I mean, he just sat there and took it like nothing.
He sat there and took it, and he had this deer in the headlights look. And
he always had that look to him, but
I mean, even more so. And he stood there, and the studio floor was covered with change. And I'm sure right after they turned off the camera, Vern probably came running in there and vacuumed all that up. But Wally, yeah. And it's funny, as we tell these stories, everything becomes, yeah, okay, I can see that. I can. Now the believability is there. You see a pattern here.
Karbo Kapers is an appropriate name for this episode.
Yep.
So what happened with Stan Hansen thinking Wally was a crazed fan?
Stan Hansen's first run here in the AWA television territory, he got a little wild on television. Stan Hansen, you see him choking Sergeant Slaughter here in this photo, and we know Stan is blind as a bat. He is the Mr. Magoo of professional wrestling. Well, as Stan is beating the shit out of his opponent on television and going crazy, Wally's got to do something. I mean, he absolutely has. He can't take this anymore. And he jumps up on the ring apron. Well, I'd say he jumps up. He pulled himself up on the ring apron, section by section. And Stan Hansen turned around and clocked Wally. Boom, nailed Wally. And Wally, of course, like a harpooned whale on the ring apron there. And Stan said, this is my first time in town here. I didn't recognize the guy. I had never met him before. For all I knew, he was a crazed fan coming in the ring, could have had a knife, could have had a gun, and I had to defend myself. And Stan Hansen leveled Wally. And I can understand it, Joe. I mean, when you're nearsighted, it's a little, you got the bright studio lights and everything else. Stan was justified. Self-defense.
I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. I think that Stan was going after Wally because Wally was going after Stan's big fat wife who had 9 kids at home, and Stan's got to feed them.
You and Ventura with your conspiracy theories. I've got no reason to doubt Stan Hansen, but that's a story.
Well, I guess if never mind. I'm just gonna leave that one alone. I'm gonna leave that one alone. Moving on, guys.
Yeah, so, and it took several guys, by the way, to haul Wally's carcass off the ring apron.
So
continuing,
Bobby Heenan had a bunch of dastardly deeds in his career in the AWA. Mm-hmm. But this next one, shall we just say it was a fate worse than death?
It was a fate worse than death. Now, you ask the average guy, about death, and you would think that's the ultimate, the death penalty. But no, this guy right here, Mad Dog Vachon, who's eating one kernel of corn at a time, I believe, with his tooth. Wally was coming out and he was telling Bobby Heenan, that Bobby Heenan was going to face Mad Dog Vachon. And Wally prefaced it by saying, I've got a fate worse than death, not death. Again, H was not part of Wally's language. I got a fate worse than death for you. You're going to get in the ring with Mad Dog Vachon. And of course, Wally slaps Heenan on the shoulder and walks out, and Bobby, erupts, and the guy's an animal. I mean, this is the end of my life. I got to write my will, what have you. But yeah, in Wally's mind, getting into the ring with Mad Dog Vachon was a fate worse than death, and very appropriate for how dastardly Bobby Heenan was. Fate worse than death. I got a lot of debt, and that's pretty bad. I tell you.
I'm thinking back. Oh, I remember seeing that one. And not only Wally's verbalizing, but seeing Bobby Heenan's reaction again. It's all in my mind. I mean, just God,
great stuff. Great
classic, stuff. Legendary.
Yeah.
One that was not caught on camera, but I wish I would have been there. I wish this would have been a pay-per-view. In this day and age, it would have been streamed live. But there was a Nick Bockwinkel roast. And Wally... So I'm guessing if it's a roast and a bunch of the boys are around, there might have been a libation or two floating around. Just guessing. But fill in the blanks there, Mick. So what happened with Wally at the Bockwinkel roast?
Well, as you can see here, Nick and I are actually responding and reacting to Wally giving his speech, allegedly to roast Nick. This was at this was in Fridley, Minnesota, and apparently Wally. And by the way, Joe, there were women in the audience, and I think probably even a couple of kids too. So that will enhance his story. Wally apparently had gone up to the.
It doesn't sound like anything with Wally needing enhancement, though.
Well, yeah, that's Anyway, so Wally Wally had gone to the bar a little bit early on in the evening, and apparently there was a drink made of amaretto, Irish cream, and whipped cream called a blowjob. And Wally had ordered a blowjob from the waitress, or from the bartender. All fine and good, it could have been left there, but Wally, when he's going to comes up to the microphone and he's going to roast Nick Bockwinkel. But Wally had to start his somewhat slurred presentation by saying, "It's funny, what up?" I told the bartender, I said, "Can you give me a blowjob?" And you should have seen what her face when I said, "Can you give me a blowjob?" And he, like 2-3 times he's saying this, and the audience is just absolutely cracking up. And this is the moment where Wally is doing his Wallyism, and he got such a kick out of the fact that the bartender had to deliver him a blowjob right there at George's and Fridley that he had to tell everybody about it.
Why is it stuck in my mind that was not the first time Wally ever uttered those words?
I think you're right. If I'm a betting man, I will, bet the house on that, Joe. But Wally was like, he's like a little kid at kindergarten who hears the word shit for the first time and goes home and shit. He wanted to share that story, and he did. And Darlene Bockwinkel was there at the time, and she was a little bit mortified. Sherry Martell, of course, was there. She got a kick out of it. Sherry, she didn't care. But yeah, Wally had to tell everybody he ordered a blowjob.
That's such a great picture. I mean, that is just one of those where you see Nick is just like losing it.
Oh,
just next to you,
Chris. And you got to remember also, besides Sherry on the dais, Ray Stevens was there. Scott Ledoux was there. Larry Nelson is up there. Mm-hmm. So, Wally had his audience, and boy, did he deliver. There you go.
Wally was a comedic foil. He was a wrestling promoter. He was a partner in the AWA. But have you ever heard of Wally the Weatherman?
This is a story that's oftentimes repeated, but we're going to repeat it again, damn it. Wally is on the wrong picture.
Yep.
That's the wrong. We actually don't have a picture for this one.
Oh, see, because I was wondering, I'm like, how does the sock make sense?
That's
hold on.
Another topic.
No,
we don't have a picture.
I think we got a picture. See, I'm so curious about that story.
Oh yeah, we do have a picture there.
Yes.
It's
number
actually,
11.
There we go. I wanted.
There
I
it
so
is.
badly wanted to get to the next story. I'm like, how the hell does that tie into the weather? And then I'm like, oh, wrong picture.
Close enough. Close enough. Wally is on the phone with Bobby Heenan, and Wally's at the wrestling office. I don't know where Bobby was, but they're complaining about, or Bobby is complaining to Wally about a payoff, and he's not very happy. We got shorted here, Nick and I, blah blah blah, and Wally, in his infinite wisdom, and this is how you end a conversation that you don't want to be a part of, says, "Bobby, I gotta let you go. It's raining in Miami." And he hangs up the phone. There was no AWA show scheduled for Miami. Nobody was going to Miami.
They're making a 4-state promotion. Come on.
Well, it's Wally apparently was doing his part, letting the nationwide audience. He told Bobby it's raining in Miami, and that was why Bobby could not stay on the phone and discuss finances with Wally Karbo because of the weather in Miami. And I remember years later, Bobby is relating that story, and he says, "I just sat there." He said, "I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if I should get mad, if I should start laughing." It worked. He got rid of me, and I sat there scratching my head. And what other podcast is going to put up a picture of Miami on a map just to have a graphic? But yeah, it's raining in Miami. So if you ever want to get rid of somebody on the phone, you tell them that.
It's raining in Miami. It's raining in Miami. That's a new code.
Yep.
I like it.
There you go.
That's an problem.
That's the cue to let's wrap up the podcast. Hey, I got to go. It's raining in Miami.
It's raining in Miami.
Oh, God.
Oh, my God.
So, so we sort of prefaced our next Wally story. Go ahead and put the picture back up. But Wally's version of Mr. Sacco, it is the first story that I tell when somebody asks me about Wally.
Now, this is a depiction. This is not necessarily Wally Karbo, although it could be. Joe, you are the master at this one. You got to set this one up, and only Wally Karbo.
Okay. Now, I can't remember where the flight was going to. I think it was on a flight to San Francisco. But for the sake of argument, that's what I'm going to call it.
Can we say Miami?
No, because then the podcast would be over. So Bobby Heenan and Nick Bockwinkel get to the airport, and they're walking behind Wally Karbo. And they look down, and they notice that Wally only has one sock on his foot. So, Bobby Heenan goes up to Wally and says, "Hey, Wally, where's your other sock?" "Oh, dear pal, I lost it." Okay, well, I'm sure Bobby and Nick are thinking, well, why didn't you just put on a new fucking pair of socks? But no, Wally's walking through the airport to board a plane to San Francisco with one sock on and one sock off. Maybe gave it to Mick Foley a little early. So they get on the airplane, they do their flight, they get off the plane, and as they're getting off the plane and walking through the terminal, Nick and Bobby look down, and all of a sudden, Wally has a sock on each foot. So Bobby's like curious and goes up to Wally, "You have a sock on each foot now. What happened? Did you get a new pair?" "Oh, no, dear pal. I just had both socks on the same foot." That story in itself is a summarization of Wally Karbo. Add in a couple of cocktails, which probably preceded all of this, and you have Wally Karbo.
Joe and Chris, can you imagine you're the guy sitting next to Wally on that flight, and you see this guy unbuckle his seatbelt because God knows he couldn't lean over, and pull one sock off the same foot that he has the other sock, and then transfer it to that other foot, and he's sitting right next to you.
It's like a wrestler who has a mask, and they take the mask off, and then there's another mask underneath.
There's another mask underneath. That's right. Great analogy, Chris. And yeah, Wally Karbo had both socks on the same foot. Oh man,
unreal.
Wow. All right.
Next one. I'm really curious about this. Just looking at the topic, the words that echoed on the 6th floor. What's that about?
6th floor Dykeman Hotel. And I mentioned this a couple of times before on the podcast. I'm just a teenager. One of my early trips downtown to the Dykeman where the wrestling office was. And this guy sitting right here, old Vernsky, smiling because it was, 22 years before he met me. But Vernsky was apparently in the office at the same time that Wally was. And as they were wont to do every now and then, they had a disagreement. So here I am, a 13, 14-year-old kid, and I get off the elevator, open up the door, and the wrestling office is down the hall. And I couldn't make out what Vern was saying, But all of a sudden, and the door to the office for some reason was open. I don't know if it was hot in there or whatever, but you hear through the entire 6th floor, "Fuck it, Vern, fuck it, and fuck you too, Vern." And that was my one of my first exposures to going downtown to the Dykeman Hotel. Wally was finally so enraged that he told Vern to not only fuck it but fuck himself, and so it was double duty for Wally Karbo. But yeah, I mean literally, Wally had that high pitched shrill of a voice, and you got this hallway, and my God, it just echoed through the whole place. Wally might as well have had a megaphone with him, but yeah, a great memory. Wally laying it into Vern, a predecessor or a precursor, I guess, to what would happen years down the road.
There, all of the Wallyisms, all of the Karbo Kapers that are just running through my head. I know we've got some more serious topics to talk about with Wally, but I want to share just one more quick story that Al Darusha tells me about Wally Karbo, told me about Wally Karbo. So you had mentioned they were in the original AWA offices were at the Dykeman Hotel. Years later, they moved the offices to the Shillard Tower. Okay. So Al walks into the office one day and he sees Wally standing in front of the safe. Now, the safe that they had was not a built-in one, but it was one of those big, massive ones that you could wheel with a lot of help to. And so that's what the AWA did, moved it from Shillard to, or Dykeman to the Shillard. Well, Al walks into the office and he sees Wally standing in front of the safe, looking befuddled. And so Al goes, "Wally, is everything okay? Did you forget the combination to the safe?" "Oh, no, dear pal. I remember the combination." "Well, so then what's the problem?" "Well, at the other building, the wall was on the other safe, so I don't know if I got to start to the left or to the right to unlock it." Wally, they don't fucking change direction. Anyway, just another microcosm of Wally Karbo.
I remember when they first made that move to Shillard Tower, Bobby Heenan came out on television and he said, Karbo was still getting used to the new office. It used to be on the 6th floor. Now it's on the 12th or 13th floor. He said, Wally takes the elevator, still gets off on the 6th floor, and walks up the next 6 set of flights. So I just, oh boy.
Well, let's move on to some of the more serious stuff of Wally Karbo. We described a lot of what Wally did, but one of the things that Wally really was a mentor to a lot of the wrestlers. Expand on that for us, Mick.
You know, Wally was a mentor, and he was also the go-to guy whenever anybody would have any problems. And we've talked about this before. And Wally was, you know, the guys would make fun of him, you know, as we do lovingly, but they really cared for Wally Karbo. He was like a father figure, grandfather figure, what have you. And whenever they would have a dispute with Vern, they would go to Wally, you know, and just say, hey, what do I do here? Or, you know, and Wally would kind of walk them through it. That was his legacy when he worked with the young guys and the veterans here in the AWA area. One time in particular, I remember, and I believe Wally had told me this himself, when they would write out the checks for the talent, and the guys would come in, you know, and pick up their checks for the previous month itinerary or what have you. And Wally's name was like already on the bottom of the check. He had already signed it. So according to Wally, what would happen sometimes is that Vern or whoever, if they didn't want to pay the guy the 500 or whatever that they, you know, he was promised, they would lower the check, lower the amount to $450, but Wally's name was at the bottom of the check. So all the guys would call Wally and say, Wally, what are you doing here? You shorted me. This isn't like you. So they were kind of hanging Wally out to dry to take the hit because they had pre-signed his name on all these checks. So, kind of a horseshit deal. And again, precursor to the eventual bullshit between Wally and Vern and buyout time. But it was kind of a struggle. And we're being serious now about Wally. It was kind of a struggle for him the last several years dealing with Vern and BS like that. So, and I don't want to say it was Vern.
Vern trying to use him as a scapegoat then?
Yeah. I mean, he would have to, and I would guess that the guys probably didn't want to confront Vern about money issues. They felt safer doing it with Wally. And so Vern probably figured, we got a good scapegoat. We can set this up, and we're going to short the guys are going to blame Wally, or at least he's going to get the phone call. So not real kosher, but that's part of animosity, the button heads.
The relationship of Nick or Vern and Wally to the boys really was like the case of good cop, bad cop.
Yeah.
Vern was the bad cop. Wally was the good cop. Everybody loved Wally. Everybody hated Vern. It was just the business dynamic that they had established. Whether they tried to do that or not, not so sure. It just sort of evolved into that. But one of the really serious things, in a bad way, that happened with Wally, he had an unfortunate run-in with the law. And I chuckle because the AWA fans let him know it.
They did. Wally was involved in a situation where he was fencing. There was a fencing operation of stolen property, furniture, clothing. Wally was infamous because he was fencing a television set, a stolen TV, and he attempted to sell it to an undercover agent. And they got Wally. They nailed him for it. Luckily, Wally had friends in high places, good, bad, or indifferent to our justice system. Wally knew the strings to pull, had some friends on the Minneapolis police department. And so Wally was let off with a slap on the wrist. Problem being, again, you just saw a newspaper article where Wally is, named very clearly in the headline there. And the fans were absolutely merciless. Anytime Wally would appear at an event at the Civic Center or what have you, they're yelling at Wally. Hey, Wally, you got a TV. Hey, Wally, have you got this? Hey, Wally, how was jail? Blah, blah, blah. And it really took a toll on Wally. And you can understand that. And it to this day, it. People still remember. They'll say, hey, well, you want, what am I, Wally Karbo? You want to buy a stolen television set? So Wally paid a price for this back in the day. From a judicial standpoint, no. From a PR standpoint, serious implications.
Yeah, Wally, I can only stop to think that when he finally left the AWA, which would have been after Wrestle Rock in 1986. That was his last event. Wally sort of went under the radar at that point. And I think, I don't know, but I just think that he probably had a little bit of relief not having to deal with Joe General Public yelling out, hey, Wally, you got a Zenith in the back seat?
Yeah, exactly.
So was that kind of the beginning of the end then for Wally?
Chris, there was so much going on with him and Vern. This just added to it. I think this was early on before the situation with him and Vern got real contentious and wound up being a court battle. But, it was the tip of the iceberg. No doubt about it.
Was that about 79? 78, 79, 80, somewhere in that time frame?
I would say probably 80 or so. Maybe more in the glory days of the Civic Center and the AWA crowds. But it was rough. It was a rough period for Wally. And
I only bring it up because I do remember I had paper routes at the time, delivering the St. Paul Dispatch and Pioneer Press. Used to be 2 papers back in the day. And opening up that bundle, and I believe it was a Saturday morning, opening up the bundle and seeing on the front page on the bottom the story of Wally getting arrested, and just heartbroken because it was an AWA guy and I was such a mark for the business.
Yeah, and Wally had a heart condition anyway, and he was a ticking time bomb, and the stress the last couple of years before he passed really added to it and kind of expedited the whole thing. So sad situation, in all seriousness.
Well, and in all seriousness, one thing that Wally was really devoted to his mom.
Oh, Wally had his mom was very old, had to be in her 90s or whatever. And whatever you want to say about Wally Karbo, I believe his mom was in a nursing home. And every day, and I mean every day that he was in town, Wally made it a point to go visit his mom. And you talk about the devoted son, and I realize this is not a real newsworthy topic, but it kind of shows the character of Wally in terms of how he felt about the people that he loved and how he treated them. I remember a lot of times, if I was going to set up a meeting with Wally, he'd say, I can't. I'm going to go meet my mom that day. I'm going to bring my mother lunch, whatever. So that's a different side of Wally Karbo. Just kind of an aside, want to throw that in there. Very, very devoted. And Wally's in his late 60s, 70s at this point. So his mom had to be in her 90s. But talk about the dutiful, loyal son. Wally was definitely that.
Well, and I got to add this in that Wally was also a really big supporter of yours, Nick.
Oh, I will forever be indebted. I mentioned Joe on this podcast a few times. The people that were most influential when I was trying to get into the business were Eddie Sharkey, Stan Kowalski, and Wally Karbo. And this picture, I just love this. Stan and Wally are in there. Dr. X, Chris Markoff, Sheik, Stan, and Kenny J. Wally knew early on. Wally knew in the middle 1970s that I had designs on becoming a part of the business. And as Wally and I got closer, he would tell me, hang in there, so on and so forth. I'm doing the best I can, but I can't fight City Hall. And I understood it. Roger Kent was a fixture. Then Marty O'Neill was a fixture. And, who am I? I'm this punk kid that runs a fan club for Nick Bockwinkel, and I'm trying to get my foot in the door. But Wally was always so supportive. There's a picture of Wally and I on SNR. One night that is particularly special to me. There was a spot show on AWA, or an independent show, I believe. Ken Patera and Kenny J were involved, and this was in Bloomington, Minnesota. And I was doing an on-camera interview with Wally. And I remember Wally said, and this is someplace I got to find this. He said, you started slowly. It took you a long time, but you're a main eventer now in our business. And I'm telling you, may not seem like much, but when Wally said that to me, it just like a ray of sunshine. It was just tremendous. So I do remember that, and I miss Wally greatly. He was very, very supportive of me against all odds. I don't know how much influence he had at the end there. I think that was more Nick, because Wally was already gone from the AWA, but I can't thank Wally enough. He was a great friend, and I miss him dearly.
When did Wally pass, Mick?
93, March of 93.
93. Well, there's a quote from Stan Mazlak that he provided at Wally's funeral. Tell us about that one.
Well, first of all, March, I believe it was March 25th of 1993, Wally passed away. And Stan Mazlak, the former wrestler and the owner of Mazlak's Bar in Northeast Minneapolis, attended Wally's funeral, as did, Nick Bockwinkel and so on and so forth. And by the way, as an aside, Nick delivered the eulogy for Wally at the funeral, and Nick broke up. He just, he literally lost it. He was very close to Wally. But Wally had an open casket at the beginning of the service, and everybody's filing by, and Wally looked great. I don't remember. I think he actually had the AWA blazer on. And Stan Mazlak is standing there looking at Wally for a while, and Stan's kind of mouthing some words. And Stan turns around and he says, "Look at the smile on his face." And Wally had this little bit of a grin. And Mazlak said, "That son of a bitch is working us. And I'm telling you, he's going to sit up any second now. And he's going to surprise the hell out of us, because that's just the way Wally is." So memorable indeed, but nobody like him. Nobody like him in all the years I've been around this business. Wally was a gem.
I'm just glad that we're not getting fined or suspended or we're true with this podcast.
We would have been suspended and true a long time ago. It would have been a face worse than debt to us.
I do have to say, though, it is clouding up, so we better get stuff taken care of before it starts raining in Miami.
It could rain in Miami. Can you imagine, guys, if Wally was still here and we had him on this podcast? Oh, my God.
Oh, wow.
I wouldn't have to do any ab workouts for a month after that.
God. Oh, man, that would be a bucket list, wouldn't it?
It would. It would.
Anyway,
maybe he is still working. Maybe he is still working, people.
Thank you, Wally. Thank you.
All right, let's go ahead and give some shout outs and wrap it up before it does start raining in Miami. First of all, guys, if you want to become a member, I know you did it before, you keep doing it. If there's something you want to see that would entice you to be a member, maybe if there's something that we're missing, let us know. Let me know, let Mick know, let Joe know. You can DM or leave a comment on the Facebook page. Just let us know if there's something extra that you want that we could kind of put into the Patreon. Let us know. For $4.99 a month, we want to make sure that you guys are getting what you want. So, go ahead and do that. As well as TeePublic. We've got a whole bunch of AWA Unleashed merchandise. And like the video, subscribe, rate, review. It helps feed the algorithm and helps continue to push us out there, especially after we had taken a month off. So there we go, guys. Shout outs, I suppose.
Yes, sir. And
all right, let's do it.
Do we have a photograph, Chris, of my shout out of the two people that I want to give a shout out to? I believe I sent you one. There they are. Two of the nicest people you would ever want to meet ever anywhere. And that's Woody Perkins and his wife, our dear friend Joyce Postian. We can't be as successful or as unsuccessful on the AWA trivia questions at Waterloo without Woody and Joyce, both great photographers. Joyce is a photographer and author. I love those two, and shout out to both of them.
I'm going off script on this one. Not going to give my shout out to wrestling fans. I got 51 other weeks out of the year to do that. I'm giving my shout out to an overachieving team, the Minnesota Vikings. Last night sucked. They sucked. Detroit kicked our ass. But if any one of you out there is disappointed in a 14-3 season after what everybody, and if you say otherwise, I'm going to call bullshit. I had the Vikings winning 6 games. They won 14. Enjoy the ride, much like it is with the podcast. It's not perfect. You can bitch, you can complain, shut up, and just enjoy the ride. I'm hoping that next week is better. I'm hoping that as a long-suffering Vikings fan, that something different happens by the end of this season. I'd love to see the Bills and Vikings in the Super Bowl. Somebody's got to fucking win that one. But all that aside, there's no suspensions. There's no, you're not true.
Mm-hmm.
But the Vikings, you get my shout out this week. Thank you for the 14-win season, for the unexpected joy. Now go and get the fucking job done. Quit losing. Okay, next.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, football.
Hey, I predicted 14-3, by the way.
Oh, and you're full of shit too.
Yeah, I did too. Hey, shout out to Donald Gilmore, one of the individuals that showed support when I was kind of going through some things. So thank you guys for everything. So how do we wrap it up? What are we doing next week? Because, I mean, we have to do another show. It's going to take a bit to kind of get back into the flow, but we haven't even decided. Shit, we kind of came up with this a couple of days before. So we're just going to wait and figure it out in a few days?
You know, we always do. Whether or not we hit the bullseye is another story altogether. But I do want to say we've got some guests lined up that are really going to be big-time stuff. And, you know, they will all come to fruition as time goes on. But, yeah, we'll come up with something. You know, even if we have to do a Jeremy Chura special, you know, on a hamburger or something, we'll come up with a topic.
I won't be able to make that one because it'll be raining in Miami.